Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tea Time with Dr. Iyabo in 2023. I'm so excited that Tea Time is back, and I'm so excited about my guest today. So, everybody, welcome. Please tell me if you can hear me. Okay, let's do our housekeeping things. Tell me if you can hear me and tell me if you can see me okay. So give me some thumbs up or just tell me if you can hear me well. I wanted to start, on time because sometimes I come on late, but this is okay, thank you for me. Hi everyone, thank you so much. If there are any friends or any family that you want to join us on this live, you know how to invite them. Just tag their name. You need to type their name in the comment section and post it, and they'll see it and they'll join us. Don't keep this live to yourself. Okay, we're going to start in a minute or two. I'm going to bring Tana on, but I hope you guys are ready for your questions, okay? And if we've never met, my name is Dr. Iyabo. I'm a high performance business, branding, life coach, relationship coach. I'm that high performance coach that will help you attain your financial goals, become financially free, become financially independent, increase your self-esteem, increase your self-image, your self-confidence, help you find your purpose in life, and help you excel at romantic and platonic relationships. So basically, I'm that all-in-one high-performance coach that you've been looking for all your life, and I love to bring on guests that will help to even elevate that mission that I have, because there's so many talented people out there, and I've been following Tana for a while, and I've just been so impressed by the work he does. So I'm going to bring him on. I think he just joined right now. He joined right at 12 o'clock. That's my type of person. Very, very committed, very disciplined. So I'm going to bring him on now, and we're going to be everybody, welcome. It's tea time with Dr. Iyabo. I'm back finally. The holidays are over.
Hey,
Hi,
I'm good.
Tana. How are
Having me.
you? Good. I've been good. I'm better now that you're here live with me. I'm like, wow, you joined in at
On
12
the dot.
o'clock
That's
on the
on time.
dot.
I'm prompt. So
That is you're my kind of person. We have as our ages are very different, but I've watched so many of your videos, so many of your reels. Our stories are similar. I haven't made as much money as you, okay? I haven't, but I've made, several seven figures in my 19 years of entrepreneurship. But it's obvious why you're successful, okay? It's obvious, but that's what we're going to talk about today. And ladies and gents, I'm not going to read Tana's whole bio. It's on the post that I posted, but I'm only going to read the first line. Tana Chidesta is the founder and CEO of Elite CEOs. He has generated, listen to me, he's generated over $50 million in the online coaching world. $50 million, not Naira. You know I'm Nigerian, I'm Nigerian American, so a lot of my community. So it's not in Naira, this is in dollars. And he looks like he's 25. I'm not going to ask him his age if he doesn't want to share it, but I'm 52 years old and I understand what it takes to be successful. But Tana is here today. Tana, say hi to my community.
yeah,
And
hey
then
guys,
we're
I'm
just going to
super
dive
excited
in.
to be here, and I'll just try to share as much value as I can. And thanks again for hosting me. I really appreciate it.
And thanks for making the time, because I know you're busy. So today we're discussing how to have a successful online business, right? I started in the online space in 2017, and the only reason I came to the online space was because I wrote a book, and my coach at the time, my mentor, said, well, you have to have some online presence so your book can sell. But that has gone from being an author to speaking at the UN 3 times, and then coaching, right? But I've had a business in the medical world for 19 years, which has brought me lots of millions. Now, how do you define a successful
Yeah, I
online
mean,
business?
for everyone that might be different. For me, it's just being able to be financially successful, financially well off. I grew up with 6 siblings, and my parents were. I was a teacher. My mom was a stay-at-home And so for me, having a successful business was just being able to buy what I needed or what I wanted without kind of worrying about the price tag. My parents would, I don't want to say they would argue, but they'd have pretty deep discussions about finances and they'd have checkbooks out. And so for most people, the reason they do business initially is not necessarily act. It's somewhat selfish, right? It's, hey, I want money so I don't have to rely on someone else. So whatever that number is for you, that can vary. I don't think that was the main driver when I started.
Okay. Some of your words are going in and out. I don't know if it's from my end or from your end.
Got my Wi-Fi on. I'll see if I pull it closer.
Okay.
If that's any better.
Yeah, the last few words you said sounded good. So we'll continue and I'll let you know if it's working or not. So basically, successful online business depends on what your personal definition of success is.
And I mean, for me personally, I just always, the whole goal of starting the business was money. And the reason to be able to provide financially for myself and my family, it was, no big than that. The kind of purpose for came later on, but initially it was just to make money so I could take care of myself and my.
Okay. All right. So now, are there any specific qualifications that people need to be able to start an online business?
The things that help the most is obviously any type of sales ability, communication. For me, the thing that I think most more than anything is right before I started, I did door-to-door sales. It was extremely difficult. And just for the simple fact that any possibly think of people would throw at me. And so I think people go into business without a lot of the communication or sales ability. And so I think if you get some of that early on, one of the most beneficial skills that you can use to really build a business.
So communication and selling. Yeah, they say your voice is still crackling. I still hear
it. Is it better
crackling.
if I just hold it?
It sounds better.
Let me do audio.
Yeah.
Hey, Trasi. They're saying it's echoing really bad. Do you know, is there something I can do so it doesn't echo so much? Do I just need to leave the room possibly, or?
Maybe it's off your laptop.
Should I shut that? Is it better like that at all, or? Oh, okay. It's a laptop. Sorry.
Yeah,
right.
it
well,
is.
That was easy. Sorry about that. Okay, here.
Okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
Because we want to hear every word you tell us. Yeah, well, so tell us again, you said the qualifications you need are being able to sell and being able to communicate,
for
correct?
me, at least what I notice a lot of times with clients, they think they're good at communication, they're really not. And is it still echoing?
Yeah, no, it's still echoing. So I think if you move closer, it's
better
still
like
echoing.
That? I don't know why it's echoing. Okay.
Yes, it's
so
better when
sorry,
you're
guys,
close
I apologize.
to us.
No.
Yes.
Cool.
Oh, that's okay.
So yeah, communication and sales. And for most people, I think they think they're a lot better at communication than they really are. And what I mean by that is, like guys, for example, we all think we're good at talking to the ladies and getting dates, but some of us are not. And so I think it's just having that practice or doing door-to-door sales or, doing something at a restaurant, something where you can kind of get that practice, because if not, I think you really struggle in starting a business. And that's where I see most people kind of struggle.
So you don't need any particular
I don't think so. I mean, it can help. It could definitely help. I don't think it's a bad thing, but I don't use anything I was learning in school. And I was studying, pre-cal, calculus, cal 3, some pretty advanced stuff, and I don't use any of it. And so I think I could have skipped a lot of that, honestly, and just gone straight into sales.
Okay. So now we've talked about qualifications. What about qualities? What qualities do you need to be successful? Because you have those qualities, I can tell. I have those qualities, I humbly say. But tell people what qualities they need to have a successful
I think the most cliche
business.
one is work ethic. My dad, I didn't realize this as a kid, but growing up, my dad, he really worked hard, and I thought that was just normal. And when I got older as an adult, I realized that my dad was exceptional, that he worked a lot harder than most males. And so I think for the average person, they underestimate how hard it will be, but they overestimate how long it will take. And so what I mean by that is 5 years, it took me 5 years to build my fortune, but it's a long time when you're in it. But when you look back, you say, hey, would you give XYZ up for the next 5 years to make $50 million? Most people would say yes, but they're unwilling to do what it takes. So I think for most people, I look at success as doors. So if you have 10 doors in front of you, some people get it on the first door, some people get it on the fifth, some take 10 because of lack of skill or they don't have as much. But I truly believe unless you have a mental disability, actually, so you can't process information, that eventually you will get there as long as you don't quit. And I just think most people are not willing to do that. And it sounds cliche, but I don't think I'm that special. And I think a lot of the people I've met that are very affluent, that do make a lot of money, they're smart, but I never look at them and go, wow, they are so much smarter than me. How could I possibly do that? I just think they have that edge. And then part of it is obviously the vehicle they're in.
So they just have to work hard and not quit.
That's the shortest thing, probably the easiest thing I said. But yeah, I mean, in short, yes.
Yes. Yeah, basically, I agree with you. Many people give up too quickly. They give up right at the cusp of when things are meant to start going well for them. I looked at your last reel today and I wrote it down because you talked about not listening to naysayers, not listening to people who are going to tell you, don't do it, it's never going to work out. You only need one person. Tell us more about that.
Most people, they don't care if you're successful. They just want to make sure you're okay. And so, especially even my family, I'm the same way. I don't care if they're multimillionaires or billionaires or anything. I just want them to be happy and to be healthy. And so when you go down an uncommon path, the reality is most people fail. And so it's normal for people who love you to not want you to do that or to doubt you because there's a lot of failure and they don't really want you to go down that path. So I think what people have to understand is if you're going to try to do something uncommon, that you have to expect people to doubt you. And it's not because they don't like you or they hate you. They just are trying to look out for you more times than not. And that was how my family was. My family was really worried when I dropped out of school. They were very concerned that what I was doing wasn't going to work. And honestly, for the first 2 years, it didn't work. And I wasn't sure what was going to happen. But I think I got to a point where I realized for me that I would rather be homeless. That's what I say. I said, I'd rather be homeless than not successful. And when that happened, things really took off because I stopped having these backup plans or thoughts in my head that I would go back to school or something else.
What if it's someone who's really close to you who tells you that the business is a bad idea? Because that happens to a lot of women. Their spouse, their boyfriend, their fiance, their husband tells them, no, you're not going to do this. What nonsense coaching do you want to do? It doesn't work. Go back to your real job. What if it's someone close to you? How do you, determine if they're telling you the truth or not? Yeah, that's tough,
especially, if you're married or you're dating, because there can be, there's more things to kind of sift through there. But the thing that I try to do first off is make sure that you surround yourself, whether it's family or friends, you surround yourself around people who support you. And then the people who don't, you have to cut them off. And when I say cut them off, it may not be completely, but I would see less of them. Or I would tell them like, hey, if that's your opinion, great. But, keep that to yourself because it doesn't help you. It doesn't benefit you. And I let people know what direction I'm going in. And I think people will notice also as you go through life, you keep finding new friends and you lose old friends because entrepreneurship is all about growth. It's all about personal growth and changing. And so when you change and other people don't, it makes them feel uncomfortable and they don't want to go with you. And so I don't think it's a bad thing. I just think you have to understand most people in life, they stay the same. The way they were when they were young, that's exactly how they are when they're older. And entrepreneurs are constantly growing. And so if people are not growing with you, they're going to get left behind. If you're married, that's a more difficult situation because, you know, it's easy for me to say, you know, I'm not married right now, for me to say, well, you know, just leave them or find someone else. But when you're in it or you've been dating for a while, that can be more difficult. But try to put yourself in a situation where either, you know, hey, if you're single now, try to find someone who will support those goals and will support your mission. I think, you know, who you marry is very important because of that reason. And then two, if you're already with someone or you have friends or family close to you and they're putting you down, try to see less of them. And when I was building my company initially, I just kind of stopped talking to my family about it as much because it didn't really help me and it didn't really kind of get me to where I wanted to go, and it kind of just put me down. And so I said, you know what, I'll just kind of keep it to myself. I'm not going to talk to them about it. And then ironically, once it started taking off, you know, everyone thought it was the greatest idea ever. But when it's not working, it's, you know, you're the dumbest person in the world. So.
But that comes with a certain level of grit and a certain level of self-awareness and self-confidence to be able to not listen to people when they're telling you that that business may end badly. Where does that grit come from? Where does that determination and that discipline come from to where you can say, okay, this is me, this is Iyabo, I want to do this business. I'm sorry you have a different opinion, but I am going to stick with it and just watch me succeed. How can people
I think
get
for
that?
me, it was putting myself in difficult situations as a young kid. So there's a lot of stuff I think that helped me. So part of it, for example, was my father. He didn't give us any money growing up as kids. And so he just would say, well, hey, do you have a job? And, you know, I'm 14, 12 years old. And I was like, no. And he says, well, I guess you can't have it. So that was an example. Another example was playing sports, especially in college. You know, I was usually one of the only white players. And so going in, you kind of had this chip on your shoulder to prove yourself that you could play with some of the other players. And so when I got to business, it actually felt somewhat easy because after I'd done sports, I'd done door to door, the way I grew up as a child, it just kind of felt natural. It was just another thing to overcome. And so I actually say one of the worst things that parents can do for their kids is give them everything they want. Or, you know, I think being a billionaire son or daughter is one of the worst things that could maybe happen to you because you can't really go up from there. Like you're at the peak and you can't really enjoy things because you haven't been in a struggle. So I don't know if the right advice is to tell people to go out there and to struggle, but I think put yourself in situations where you have obstacles or things you have to go through to excel, because if your life's easy all the time and every time something bad happens, your parents are there to bail you out or someone's going to save you, you're not going to push through the hard times because you feel like you don't have to or it's not worth it. And for the first 2 years I was in business, I called my mentor probably 5 times over 2 years, and I almost quit because it was so hard and it was so unrewarding. You know, I was working 16 hours a day, I made $2,000 in the first 2 years. And so after a while, you start thinking, well, maybe I should just watch Netflix or maybe I should just play video games. So for me, it was mostly just because I'd been up through difficult things before, it kind of prepared me for later in life. And so whether it's sports or sales or, you know, a competition or something competitive, I think those things help people later down the road personally. That's just my opinion from what I've seen.
I have so many questions coming up in my mind for you, and I'm writing them all down. So the mentor you had, was that a paid mentor?
So he was a friend of my dad. And ironically, so my parents are very religious. So I grew up pretty conservative, and they are. And I was not going to church at the time. And so he said, hey, if you come back to church, I'll show you how to build a business. And I didn't really hold up my end of the bargain. I'm sad to say. I feel bad for it, but he basically let me come to his house every day after I went to the gym, and he started showing me things. And I'm very grateful for that because I don't think I would be where I'm at without him because I just wouldn't have known where to look. But I will say after him, the best growth I had was my first paid coach 2 years later. And I don't know if it was so much what I learned. I think it's because I had so much to lose. And so I think there's a lot of power in putting yourself in situations that are uncomfortable or you have something to lose, because it's hard to kind of fake it. It's like a playoff game. You know, you'll have a regular season game, then playoffs, and playoffs people just take more seriously no matter how much you try to manufacture that environment. So yeah, to answer your question, it was free, but my best results actually came from my paid coaches.
And you know why I'm asking that? You know why? Because I also got a lot of free coaching from my dad. My parents were both entrepreneurs. My mom didn't go to school.
Wow.
She couldn't read or write English, but she was good at math. She was good at her business. They both made a lot of money. They built a lot of real estate in Nigeria. Even in England, they owned a nice home. But like you said, my parents didn't spoil us with money. They didn't. I mean, they made sure we got good education. We had a roof over our heads and all of that, but they didn't spoil us with money. But people have to realize, right, like you said, that they need that one person. One is fine. They need that one person who's going to be beside them, in front of them, teaching them, whether it's a dad who's good at entrepreneurship or whether it's, the mentor you talked about. But eventually they will also need some paid coaching, right? Because people, I feel like they always want to do it for free, and they feel like, well, why should I pay? Why can't I just get somebody to help me for free? And that's doable, but is the person going to be committed to you if they're not your friend's dad, like your situation? Or if they're not your dad, like my situation, they're not going to be committed.
It's funny because, so here's the reason you pay for it. So when I had that when I first started, the first 2 years I made $2,000, and I was not willing to hire anyone. I just wouldn't do it. Once I finally hired someone, I made the $50 million in about 4-ish years. And so if you look at the opportunity cost, let's just say it was, 10, 15 million a year. Well, that means by not paying someone, I actually lost that money. And that's what people don't think about. They just think, oh, well, if I don't pay $5,000, then I get $5,000. What they're not realizing is the skills you'll learn is what's going to help you make that higher income. And so by not paying money, you're actually losing money. And I think people don't recognize that. And that's a big mistake, because looking back now, I could have made even more money faster if I jumped sooner than waited. And eventually you do have to pay, because like you said, the people at the top are very busy. And unless you have a friend or of the family or your dad or it's like me, I can only do so much for free because there's so many people who need help and I have so many things to do. And a lot of times the free content, like this is free content, it's great. But a lot of what people need is not just kind of the big picture. They need very specific information of say this or do exactly this or copy this. And those things will only come from paid resources.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now they're going to say, but I don't have any money. Tana, Dr. Iyabo, it's easy for you guys to say, pay a coach 3,000, pay a coach 20,000, but I do not have any money.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have any money either. My situation was when I had my first coach, I had $2,000 in my bank account. And I think the reason I did it is I remember at 23, I had $2,000. And then at 25, I had $2,000 doing it my way. And I remember that moment of clarity where I realized, well, my way isn't working, so I better figure this out. So I paid the $2,000, and then I paid the rest on a credit card. It was my first credit card ever at 25. I've never had a credit card before. And I think the limit was like $4,000. So I paid pretty much everything I had, and it was scary. But what I think people forget is they go, well, what happens if it doesn't work? And I think if you really think deeply about it, the worst thing that can happen is either A, you go back and live at your parents, or B, if you don't have your parents, you become homeless. But as long as you're still alive and you can still breathe, you still have an opportunity to grow. And I think for me, everyone's different. For me, I was more willing to be homeless than I was to be unsuccessful. And that's when the switch changed. And so I don't know who it was. I think it was, he's a really famous speaker. I forget his name right now, but he talks about the story where, the teacher takes the student into the water and pushes him under. And then, he's like almost drowning, and then he lets him up, and he talks about, when you want to breathe or be as successful as you want to breathe, you'll be successful. And I think when people get to that point, that's when they make that decision. And some people, they're not willing. They would rather hold on to the money than take the leap and be successful. And to each their own, but I do think you have to make a mental decision when you're going to do that, because you can't be on both sides of the fence. You have to kind of draw a line in the sand and jump.
You can't have your
Unfortunately
cake
not.
and
No,
eat it too.
unfortunately not.
Yeah, once you've eaten it, you don't have it anymore. You can't have it and eat it too. And you keep talking about homeless. I remember the time that I used to say that to myself, and I still read journals now where I wrote that down. I used to say that I would rather be homeless than stay in this bad marriage. Honestly, I remember one day when I had decided to file for divorce, and I was crying and taking a walk, because I walk a lot. That's my exercise of choice. And I'm like, God, just give me the strength to leave this marriage. I don't care if I end up under a bridge with my daughters. I just want peace. I don't care if I'm homeless. So, you have to have that much conviction to say that, it's either, even if I don't get this and I end up homeless,
and
I'll be okay.
and it's easier, like in the moment, it's very scary. But looking back, I wish I had done it sooner, because I didn't lose anything, right? When I started, I had a bad job. And when at 25, I was still doing the same bad job, and I hated it. And once I finally made that shift, things started to improve, because I forced myself to be successful, and I was willing to do whatever it took. And if you think about it, if you're willing to work 12, 14, 16 hours a day and show up and do the work and all those things, it's unreasonable over an extended period of time that you won't get there. And most people, you have to be willing to do it, though. It's easier said than done. It takes 5 seconds to say, I worked 16 hours a day. But to actually work 16 hours a day, I mean, it's brutal. It's hard, but it's worth it. It's totally worth it.
It is. I tell people that if you haven't tried the same business with strategies that work for 5 years, you haven't tried long enough. That's what I say. And they're like, oh, 5 years. I'm like, yes, 5 years. If you haven't, and you make sure you're using strategies that work. Because a lot of people think they're doing what's right, and you go in and because I used to audit medical practices for many years, and I would go in and I'm like, well, this is why you're losing money. This is why. They're like, oh, really? I'm like, yes. All I had to do was look at your books, ask you a few questions in 30 minutes, and realize that you've just been wasting your time, doing things that don't work. So people have to first find the strategies that work, right, before they say it's not working. Now, you said you put, there were credit cards that you used for the coaching and all that. I had to take a loan. I remember when I started my practice, I took out a loan of $350,000. Again, as a black, I'm telling you, 350. Oh, yeah, I was 32 years old, but I was so determined. I only worked for a practice for 9 months, and I quit after that. I'm like, if I can be seeing 40 patients every day for somebody who's driving all these flashy cars, why can't I do that myself? So I quit, and I found a building, and I made my business plan and everything. I talked to my dad, I talked to my CP, and discovered I needed $350K. And I did all I could. Tana, every single bank declined me. Every single bank. Every single SB. I finally found a small bank in Florida that said, you know what, you're a doctor, you have a good credit score. I'm going to take a chance, but the interest rate is going to be this high. And I said, that's fine. Give it to me. My dad said, go ahead and take it. As long as you use the money well, you'll pay it back. And I paid that money back in about 6 years, and my practice started making seven figures by year 6.
And that, to your credit, that is a lot scarier than what I did. So I think if anyone's going to tell someone to invest in themselves, you definitely could be the one to do it.
I did it, but my dad gave me the power to do it because he'd been an entrepreneur all his life. My dad didn't go to college. He did finish high school. My mom didn't have any education, but they were very, very successful entrepreneurs. So my dad said, you know what, you have to put in a lot to be able to be successful. So he gave me that, but many people don't have that, and that's why they need coaches like you and I. Now, let's go on to talk about, before I go to the questions, I wanted to ask you about fitness and success in business.
Yeah, it's
Tell me
funny
about that.
because you'll see both sides. You'll see someone who's in really good shape who is not good at business, and vice versa. You'll see the same thing, and then you'll see someone who's not in good shape who is good at business as well. So I think my take on it is, I don't think by any means you have to be in shape, but what I will say is a lot of the principles of fitness, discipline, waking up at the same time, going to the gym, like all those things you learn for your body, they translate very well over to business. And a lot of it actually is it's all physical, and then it moves to mental. So when I was starting, to play collegiate sports and all those things, it was just, weights, running, film, all those types of things. And then when I started a business, I just said, hey, instead of, physically performing, I'm now going into mental. And a lot of it actually felt easier because, yes, I still had to think, but I'm like, I'm sitting in a chair. This is way easier than what I was doing for sports. So I think what I've seen is people who do have, more times than not, right? Because you can always find people who don't fit the mold. But I think more times than not, people who have some type of fitness background or physical sport background, they seem to excel a little bit easier because they've been up against obstacles versus someone who maybe has never had that background. When they get in business, the second something goes wrong, they panic, right? And they don't know what to do. But in sports, it happens all the time, right? Someone beats you on a play, you don't run fast enough, you don't lift enough weights, you don't jump high enough, you just keep going. So I do think that mentally did prepare me for business. And people I've seen in business who seem to excel a little easier, they seem to have that background just because they've been up against obstacles before. That's the I think.
I Yeah, I definitely agree. So which one is more important, health or wealth?
Yeah, it's got to be health, right? Because at the end of the day, if you're super rich but you have terrible health, you can't enjoy it. And I think being healthier does make you wealthier. At least for me, I'm only, I feel like I'm getting older. I say that, but I'm 30 now, and so I'm still youngish. But I feel that as I'm getting older, if I don't take care of myself, it actually does affect my performance in work. Because if I eat bad food, it's not like my 20s where I kind of ate whatever and I woke up and I felt the same. I'm now starting to notice I don't feel as good. I don't feel as optimal for work. I feel a little sluggish, or if I don't go to the gym. So I do think it not only makes you be able to live longer and enjoy it, but I also think that you perform far better. So even if you're a great performer, if you're not taking care of yourself, imagine if you did. I think it takes you to that next level. So that's just my personal opinion.
And I agree. I agree. All of my coaching clients, that's what I start with. If they come to me for business,
Yeah.
we go through their health first. We go through their physical fitness. What are you putting in your body? I'm not saying you have to be a size 0 or size 2 or whatnot. But you do have to be healthy. You have to feel good. You have to walk, you have to move your body. You have to eat the right foods most of the time and drink your water and sleep well. So I'm going to go on to the questions. One of the questions was, what if you don't have that one person that we're talking
If I didn't
about?
have the one person, my mentor, I would have just paid for help sooner. And the reason I say that is I actually made most of my success by paying coaches. I think the harder question on top of that is, who do you pay? Because unfortunately, when you come into the coaching industry, it's not regulated. It's not like when you became a doctor. Becoming a doctor is way harder because you got to take tests and go to school and get degrees. The coaching industry, anyone can qualify. I mean, you just say you're a coach, you're a coach. So I think the bigger question is you need to pay someone, but then just try to look at three things. I always tell people to look at experience, and then I look at specificity to what they want to do. So if you want to learn fitness, maybe hire someone who's built a fitness company, for example. And then the last one is attention, how much attention they're going to give you. I don't really think there's another path. I think it's naive, or it sounds arrogant to think that you'll get to the top without any help. And I think almost anyone you look at their success, they've had something or someone happen that prepared them, whether it was a job or, you know, a prior mentor or an opportunity, whatever it is. But yeah, so I would pay someone. I know that's maybe not the flashiest answer, but ultimately, if you don't know what you need to know, you have to learn it. And the fastest way is to pay for it. Everything else that's free or books or whatever, yeah, it can help. But you'll realize in the long run, you're trading time, and time is just your most valuable asset. And as you get older, you don't want to waste any of it. I know, I know.
I know. And if books could make
Yeah,
everybody wealthy, everybody would be
correct.
wealthy because many
A
people
lot of
read
books,
books.
in my opinion, are pretty
Yeah.
fluffy. They don't have very actionable content.
Yeah.
And I actually would get frustrated with a lot of books because it would
Yes.
say, you know, millionaire mindset or millionaire whatever. And I read to the end and I go, like, what do I do? This it's just a motivational book. And that can be important, but it takes more than motivation. There's actionable things you have to do to make money. It just isn't gonna happen because you're trying. So I think for most people, paying is gonna be the best option if you don't have a friend or family member. And just so you guys know, again, for context, I did have that, and I still wish I had paid sooner because I think that I wasn't aware of how much more I needed to learn outside of that individual.
Yes. I paid immediately, and that was because of my dad's advice. He said, "You borrowed this chunk of money. You have to make sure you spend it wisely." So and he said, "I'm not a doctor. I don't know your field, but go and
Mm-hmm.
find people who know the medical business, pay
Mm-hmm.
them so you can use the money right." And that's what I did. I paid coaches a big chunk of that money, coaches and consultants and medical business experts to help me. Now, I'm glad that you said be careful, pay for
Mm-hmm.
coaches, but be careful who you pay for, because a ton of people will ask me, "But you don't have a coaching certificate." And I'm like, I do not need a coaching certificate. I said, that's what I tell them. I'm like, bring me all the coaches that have coaching certificates, and I'll be able to teach them much more than they know from their coaching certificates. Can you
Yeah,
comment on
it's
coaching
so funny you bring
certificates?
that up because part of what my company is trying to do now is we're trying to get accredited certifications. But the reason we're trying to get them is not because we think they're valuable, it's because the marketplace thinks they're valuable. But the reality is, most of what people need to learn is sales and marketing and operations. A lot of the accreditations or
Mhm.
certificates it's just general info, or it's more about the fulfillment. So for example, if I took a trainer, personal trainers are taught how to do exercises, how to do stretching, whatever. They're not taught how to make money or how to do sales. And so I'm not sure why the
Right.
public thinks they're so valuable, but most of the stuff that is accredited or, you know, has some type of government body behind it, etc., it's not actually very helpful in business at all. I don't use anything I learned from school. I don't know if you do, maybe because you're in the medical field, but for me,
Well,
it was a huge waste of time. I wish I could go back in time and just get out of high school and start the business. So I don't think more times than not they're very helpful at all, and I don't think it means very much, to be quite blunt.
well, you're right. Nobody taught me business in medical school. Nobody teaches doctors, and this is why there's so much burnout and there's so much disgruntlement in doctors, because there's a lot of money to be made in medicine, in the business
Right.
side of medicine, but it's not being made by the doctors, right? It's being made by people like you. We call them the money guys or the business guys who are looking for practices to acquire. They look for a failing practice, they buy it for $10,000 and they build it up to $1 billion because the doctor who was there knew nothing about business. So I learned business from watching my mom and dad, and just from reading books and just starting. I read one medical business book before I started my practice. Only one. But I had a lot of consultants come to my office over and over, one-on-one, to teach me medical coding, to teach me human resources, to teach me money management, all of those things that I needed to know, medical supplies, all of that. That's how I became good at business. I only read one book because people are like, "Oh, you don't have an MBA." I'm like, "No." "Oh, how many business books have you read?" Well, now I read more because I just, yeah, now that I've done so well in business, I'm actually reading more business books, but I only read one business book before I started my business. I just started and I got experts to teach me. So I'm really glad you said that. Be careful of the coach. You said experience, specificity, and attention. Tana, how will they know that the coach will give them attention before they even hire
I guess
the coach?
I guess sometimes you may not, right? But what I like to ask for when I'm getting on a call, that to me the things that make sense to ask is, the experience portion, for example, is, how long have you been in business? How much money have you made? If you're going to pay someone to help you make money, I would like to know that they've made some money, because I just feel if they can't do it for themselves, how can they possibly do it for me? Right? Because that doesn't make sense. Like, if you knew how to make money, why aren't you making it? That's the first thing. The second thing with the specificity is more, is it in your field? Like, for example, I have a lot of fitness knowledge. And so if someone comes to me and they're like, hey, I want to build a dance business, I could probably help them. But if they know someone who is specific to dance, that could be a better option, because they're going to know the language and just the specifics to that industry a little better, right? And then thirdly, the attention part you asked about, it comes down to asking. You don't know 100%, but I typically tell clients to look for something that is one-to-one. Not because group can't work or it's bad. I just think if you pay for something and you're not going to get some one-on-one help, you're not sure what you're going to get, and you don't know if your questions will get answered. And so, at least in my programs, we try to make it as one-on-one as possible, because every client has different issues, different skill levels. And so if we try to meet them at their level, I think they have a higher chance of success. It's harder for the business. So like for myself or you, it would be harder to do that. But I think it is better for the client in the long run. But I just think it's going to know what you're looking for. You go in and you just ask a lot of questions. You don't say like, hey, how does coaching work? What does that look like? You're going to just kind of get whatever they throw at you. I think that you can get in trouble. And so over time, I hired coaches. Those were the questions I started asking to really know if it would be a fit, at least for me.
If you are not making money, how can you teach me how to make money? I love that statement, because I say it all the time. I tell clients that you're going to hire coaches who themselves are practicing on you, basically. Why are you going to hire people who haven't made the kind of money you want to make and you think they can teach you how to make it? That's number one thing you said. Number two, it's funny that you talk about one-on-one coaching. You should see me smiling and smirking when you were saying that, because I've tried them all. I've tried membership. I stopped that within about 8 months. I'm like, this is a waste of time for me, and it's a waste of time for the clients, because nobody's learning anything. I tried group coaching, and now I just do one-on-one, and my coaching is not cheap. I don't know how much you charge. I'm sure it's not cheap. My coaching isn't cheap, but I prefer one-on-one, because I believe it's more effective, because we're all unique people. But a lot of coaches out there will not agree with you and I. A lot of them will say group coaching is the best because it helps to elevate community. They have a sense of community. And I'm like, you can have one-on-one coaching and still build a community. Yeah. You can still network.
I think they say, just me being frank, I think people say that because it's easier to scale. It is easier to scale group coaching, but it's not what's best for the clients, what's best for the business owner. I disagree that it's better, because the problem is when people get, like, let's say a group call, the skill levels are so different with the clients. No matter how good you try to vet your clients, people come in with different skills. So if someone's really good at sales, but they're not good at ads, and this person's good at copywriting and they're not good at messaging, the problem is when you're answering the question, it's not specific to them. And a lot of them can't discern like what parts to use for their specific situation. They need like very direct feedback. And so that's why I think one-to-one's better. I think you can have group aspects. Like, you could have people show up on a group call and do group aspects, but I do think ultimately they need to have feedback where they can send you a message or send you a call or send you something where it's like, hey, this is what happened. What can I specifically do? And yeah, it costs my company more money, but I just do what I feel is best. And I wouldn't feel good just doing group. We'd make a lot more profit, but I don't think it's the best service, and I don't think it would be right. That's just how I personally feel.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I believe that it's best for the business owner, but it's not best for the client. And we're going to wrap up because I want to be respectful of your time. Let me see. There was a question here about, is it better to work hard or work smart?
That's a great question. So I'll say this. I think in the beginning, you have to work hard. Working smart doesn't really come into play, in my opinion, until you've made enough money where you can start hiring staff, you can start contracting out work. I think most people in the beginning, they underestimate how hard it will be because you really have to do the sales, the messaging, the marketing, the tech, the operation, doing everything. And so the reason I worked, 16 hours a day when I started my business is not because I wanted to, I had to. Like if I didn't do it, the business would not grow. It would have stopped. And that's why some people, they don't scale past certain numbers because they just say, well, I'm only going to work this much, but then they can't hire any help. They can't contract stuff out. So I think what you see, and this is a shift I've seen, I'm actually going to post some of these conversations, but you'll see people go 6, 7, 8, 9 figures. Once they get past 8, I see more of a shift to smart. So the vehicles, how they train, like being in tech versus a different industry, stuff like that. I think getting to 7 figures, 6 or 7 figures, a lot of times if you just work hard, you can get there with a couple employees or a couple contractors. So I do think working smart is like a good thing to think about, but I think for most people, it's just putting in the work until you get to that certain level, and then you can start looking at those things. But when you're a one-man show or a one-man woman or one-woman show, excuse me, I just think you need to just put the time in and just learn those skills. And then as you make money, you can start contracting stuff out and building a team. So
work hard.
I think
before
so because if you're not making any money, there's nothing to really work smart on.
Yeah.
Like you got to put your head down and start going.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I had my fair share of long hours, but people see me traveling everywhere now and they're like, oh, she has a good life. You don't remember when I put in the work.
I took out, like, I don't even know if I would have done that. That was a very large amount of money, and that's an amazing story. Like, you should be very proud of that. I was stressed about $5,000.
Thank you.
$5,000, and you took out 350,000. I mean, that is incredible. That's an incredible story.
To start a medical practice, I had to, because I wanted a nice medical practice. I didn't want just some, shoddy like corner practice. I wanted it fully equipped, I wanted a good practice, and it's still existent today. I'm doing this live. I have doctors working in the practice for me and staff working for me. So there's a lot of questions. We can't answer them all, guys. You're going to either have to come to my DM or go to Tana to answer them. But these last 2 questions, I'm going to put them together because they're similar. Somebody asked the best strategies to use for marketing and growing a product. And then the other question was, what's the best way to build social media presence?
So with the marketing, this might sound counterintuitive, but for the first year of my business, I didn't do any social media. And the reason I didn't is all my sales were coming from having conversations with people in my DMs and then getting them on phone calls. So I think for you, anyone who's listening, you don't need to go out. That's how I thought you had to make money. Get a massive following, be super famous, be super popular. Most of you need to have more conversations with people and sell them your products. That's how you make money, and that's how the business grows. I think once you do that, again, it gets easier to grow with social media. I don't think social media should be the main focus in the beginning because it's the conversations and the sales calls and selling which is going to grow the business. And I think you can waste a lot of time creating content, which can take a lot of time. I mean, I have a big team now, but content takes a lot of time, especially if you edit it nice, etc. So I think for most of you, you should have more conversations with people and make a goal. Say you're going to have 100 conversations a day or 100 DMs a day and make some sales. And then once you make money, it gets easier to produce content. But content is not necessary to be super successful. I mean, I've met billionaires who have hardly any social media presence. So it can help. Don't get me wrong. I mean, Kim Kardashian, she obviously has made a lot of money from having a strong social presence. But I don't think that's the way you should start a business. I think you need to go out and sell a product. And that just starts by having conversations, as boring as that sounds. And then once you start building up your business, you can start creating content because, again, you can build that team and hire out help. So, I have 11 editors on staff now, but I'm able to pay them because I'm making money. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to produce half the content I produce. It just wouldn't happen.
So how do they have those conversations if we're talking about an online business? You talked about DMs. How else can they have conversations? Doing lives
Yeah,
like
so
we
the
are
ways
doing maybe?
that I would generate conversations was, the most basic way is anyone who likes or comments on your post, message them. Like, hey, like, saw you're a follower, saw you commented. That starts it. Another way you can do it's harder is cold messages. So you can just reach out to people and maybe they look like your avatar, and I'd say, hey, hope it's not weird, I'm reaching out. I saw you had a couple kids. I'm from a family of 7. Just wanted to tell you how cute your kids were. Like, oh, thank you. That's one way. Another way is lives, like you said. You can do call to actions. Like at the end of this video, you might say, hey, message me for XYZ. Stories are great. You can do swipe ups on your stories or tell people to message you. So it's just generating as many as you can. And I think that's important because a lot of people don't want to do it because it's hard. But the thing that you should think in business is if it's hard, that means not a lot of people will do it. So if you do it, you're going to stand out. And a lot of times we're not that skilled. When I started my business, I wasn't that skilled. So I just told myself I would outwork people and I would do things other people weren't willing to do. And I think that's what made me more successful. And then as you have success, you become more skilled. And then it just, it's just rolling snowball at that point. You just have more success.
Wonderful. I wish we could continue. There's a ton of questions, but you and I are busy people. Tana, this was amazing. Thank you so much for this. How can people come to work with you? So if somebody's listening to you and they're like, this guy is everything I need his help
Just shoot
in life. How can they come to work?
It wouldn't make sense if I just talked about DMs and then didn't tell people to send one. But yeah, just shoot me a message. Or you can click the link in my bio, but yeah, more than happy to help. And, I really appreciate you having me here and the questions were great. I always am more inspired, like after having these conversations to go out and do more. So thank you for having me and I hope it was helpful.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much. A lot of people are asking about crypto and trading. I don't know anything about crypto and trading. So you'll have to go to Tana for that. But if you're a woman, I only coach women. So if you're a woman who wants to excel in business, you want to make your millions like I have done, you want to be really good at public speaking like I'm doing. I'm an introvert. Believe it or not, I'm an introvert. I like to spend time on my own, but I do love to help people. So if you want to get good at public speaking, you want to increase your self-esteem, you want to get good at relationships, that's why I'm the Money to Honey coach. So I'm going to advertise myself here as well now that I have Tana's followers here. So we're both here for you, but I only coach women. So Tana, thank you so much. I hope sometime maybe later this year we can have another conversation.
Of course, yeah.
But
Thanks for having me,
you
and I
for
really
your
appreciate
time.
it. It was fun.
Thank
See
you.
you
Wish
guys.
you all the best. Bye. Bye, everyone. Bye.